This is Joe with PrepAgent. Good to see everybody in YouTube land. I'm here with my best friend Amanda from Indiana. What I want to do today, so just so everybody knows out in YouTube land, is go over some questions that Amanda sent me. Amanda sent me some great questions that she was struggling with. And not only do I want to go over those questions, I want to go over the concepts related to those questions so that she could pass the test regardless of the exact question because she understands the concepts. Sound good?
Great.
I think my words got a little twisted there. So here we go. I'm going to start you out with this question here. I really like this question as a place to begin.
Okay.
So would you mind reading that question out loud so everybody could listen to it if they're not watching?
Sure. 3 people owned a house as joint tenants. In the year 2009, one died. Last month, another died. Based on these facts, which of the following correctly describes the remaining person's ownership interest in the house?
Okay, read the answers for me.
A. Joint tenancy with the deceased person's heirs. B. Tenancy in common with the deceased person's heirs. C. Severalty. D. Partitioned tenancy by entirety.
Okay. Now, do you know the answer? Don't say it if you do. Please don't say it if you do. But do you know the answer? Not really?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay, hold that thought. But first, what are we really talking about in this question? What we are talking about is title. What does title mean to you?
I don't know, like how you're described, your title, like Mrs. or Principal. I don't know.
Way too complicated. Way too complicated. So, when we have title, I want you to think of ownership. One thing you and I have spoken about in leading up to this lesson today was to simplify things as much as possible at all times, correct?
Yes.
Title is ownership. That's all you have to know. Title is ownership. Where it's title to a car, title to a house, it's ownership, okay?
Okay.
There's 2 ways you could own property. Do you know what they are?
Severalty, and concurrent estate.
Severalty and a concurrent estate. Basically, there's 2 ways you could own property. By yourself or with somebody else. That's the easy way to say that. Severalty or a concurrent estate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's not many ways you could own something by yourself. You know, it's you, and you. That's it. However, when you have a concurrent estate, there's multiple ways you could own with other people. Do you know in the names of any of those ways you could own property with others?
Joint tenancy.
Excellent. Do you know another one? Well, don't worry about that just yet. We're going to get to that, okay? Okay, so like I said, severalty, you're by yourself. Like this lady here. She's by herself. Concurrent estate, you're with somebody else. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 types of concurrent estates that come up for your exam, joint tenancy, tenancy in common, and community property. Do you know anything about any one of those?
Yes.
What do you know?
Joint tenancy is 2 people, they own it equally. Tenancy in common could be 2 or more people, they all own it, undivided shares. And community property, I'm not sure.
All right, we'll go over these 3 in just a second. First, let's get the community property out of the way.
Okay.
That just means marriage.
Oh.
Okay? They're talking about husband and wife. And those laws vary from state to state. So it may not even come up on your exam, but it's really easy. Community property has to do with marriage. The more important ones is that joint tenancy and tenancy in common one. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The tenancy in common has unity of possession. Okay, so tenancy in common is unity of possession, but separate titles. And here's the big point here, and this relates to the question you were asked about. If a tenant in common dies, title passes not to the other tenant in common, but to the other person's estate or heirs. So basically, if you and I got property and I died, who gets the property?
Would it be nobody?
Nope, it would be my children or my heirs.
Oh. Oh, your heirs. Okay. It wouldn't be to me though.
No, no. The tenant in common dies, title passes not to the other tenants in common, but to that person's estate or heirs. Joint tenancy has the right of survivorship. So if we have the property as a joint tenant and I die, now who gets the property?
The other
You would.
tenant.
You would.
Yeah.
Amanda would. Okay, so tenants own property equally. If a joint tenant dies, the other joint tenant inherits the entire property. You cannot will a joint tenancy. Why not? So if you and I take a property as a joint tenant, why can't I will my portion?
I'm not sure.
Well, think about it. Joint tenancy has the right of survivorship, correct?
Right.
So I can't will my portion because you automatically get it. You're the surviving joint tenant because you have that right of survivorship. So I don't have the right to will it to somebody else.
Oh, because I'm the first person that gets it.
Exactly. There you go. So therefore, probate's not necessary under joint tenancy. It goes right to you. So
Gotcha.
with that logic, are you following me so far?
Yeah.
Can I take a joint tenancy with a corporation?
No.
Why? Following the logic we just went over. Why not?
Because a corporation isn't a person, it's a big entity.
Exactly. So the rules on a corporation dying versus a person are very different. So it wouldn't be equal.
Right.
Make sense? So if you understand that joint tenancy has that right of survivorship, it'll help you answer a lot of questions on your exam that could come up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Can there be more than one person in a joint tenancy?
Absolutely. Yes, there can.
Oh, okay.
So when you have joint tenancy, you have this time, title, interest, and possession. Say that again for me.
Time, title, interest, possession.
Interest and possession. Time, title, interest, and possession. Time, title, interest, possession. You could say to tip, which is why I have it highlighted in blue. To tip. Time, title, interest, and possession. Time, title, interest, and possession. Okay?
Okay.
Got to remember that one. Really important. All right, so here, I made this little diagram for us. Okay? So we have our three people here. Joint. Okay? This guy, we're going to boot out of the picture. All right? See you later. How's that sound? We don't like him. In comes this girl. You with me so far?
Yes.
Is she a joint tenant or a tenant in common?
I would think that the joint tenants are the original people,
Awesome. You're doing great.
and then she would have her, wouldn't she just have her own portion?
So would she be a tenant in common or a joint tenant?
Tenant in common, because she wouldn't be a joint tenant.
Bang. Because she violated that unity of time. Remember, you just read to me to tip, time, title, interest, and possession. The four unities that make a joint tenancy a joint tenancy. And she came
Gotcha.
a later date, so now she's a tenant in common. Got it?
Okay. Yes.
Great. Now, let's do something that relates a little closer to the question that was asked, okay? So here we have our three joint tenants. Do you remember what happened in that question?
Two of them passed away.
All right, so boom. This guy bites it. All right. You like how I had the little tombstone prepared for you?
Yeah, it reminds me of how.
Yes. So who has the property now? Did his heirs? Does his children come in?
No.
It's with these two people, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, what they said is later, this is like a haunted house or something, she bites it. So now what? Who has the property?
He does.
This handsome guy in the blue shirt, right?
Right.
Is this a concurrent estate anymore?
Is concurrent like multiple people
Right.
owning it? No, it's just him by himself.
What's the word for that?
Severity.
Let's see
Is
if we
that
can answer
right?
this question right now.
Okay.
Here, read it out loud.
3 people owned a house as joint tenants. In the year 2009, one died. Last month, another died. Based on these facts, which of the following correctly describes the remaining person's ownership interest in the house? A. Joint tenancy with the deceased person's heirs. B. Tenancy in common with the deceased person's heirs. C. Severalty. D. Partitioned tenancy by entirety.
What do you think?
I would say C.
Excellent. Good. Why?
Because he's by himself.
By himself. Guy's all by himself now. Okay? And remember, those people's heirs cannot get the property. If they wanted to will it to their heirs, they should have taken the property as a tenant in common. Does that make sense?
Right.
And it all comes back to this slide here. Joint tenancy, right of survivorship. And that's huge. The state loves to ask about that one.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
Good. Ready to move on to another one?
Yes.
All right. I don't mind if we do either. Okay. Let's read this one out loud.
A real estate broker specializes in helping both buyers and sellers with the necessary paperwork involved in transferring the property. Although not an agent for either party, the broker may not disclose either party's confidential information to the other. The broker is best described as a or an A. Buyer's broker, B. Independent contractor, C. Dual agent, or D. Transaction broker.
Okay. So let's stop there and let's review this concept a little bit. Okay? So first you see these words. Buyer's brokers, independent contractor, dual agent, transaction broker. First thing I look at is independent contractor. That could be many people. What do you do for a living right now?
Esthetician, like skincare, facials, waxing.
Aren't you an independent contractor?
Yes.
Okay, so that could be many people. I have here a hairdresser, personal trainers. So that's a very general term. Okay, you're an independent contractor. They're independent contractors. So it really doesn't narrow it down here. That could be many things. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Dual agent. I really big James Bond fan, as you can see. Every time I hear the word agent, I think of James Bond. He's just so great. What's a dual agent?
The dual agent represents both the buyer and the seller.
Awesome. You're doing great. People love to say for the exam, you will never use this information after you pass. How often have you heard that?
Quite often.
I hate those people. One, that doesn't help you motivate to study, if people keep telling you that. And two, it's not entirely true. For example, dual agent. Dual agent's a term you better know after you pass. If you don't understand what it is, there could be a lot of legal ramifications behind that. So all those people who keep saying nothing's relevant, stop listening to them. You promise?
Okay. Yes.
They're just saying that because they don't know any of this information themselves, and they won't want to feel stupid. The reason they say that. Okay, so dual agent's an important one. Okay, so here I did my little cartoon for you. You like my animation? I got the guy here helping the buyer and the seller. This guy
Yeah.
is the seller. That's the buyer. This is our agent with a little Laurel and Hardy hat. What's the problem with being a dual agent?
What was that?
What's the problem with being a dual agent?
Um, well, I mean, you couldn't represent both sides equally, I don't feel like.
It gets really tricky because you're supposed to
Yeah.
show loyalty, neutrality, fiduciary duty to your buyer and seller. Now, you can do this as long as you disclose it. Now, when you have your dual agent, treat the buyer and seller with fairness and honesty. Cannot reveal confidential personal information of either party. Okay? So that's where the
Okay.
dual agency comes in. By the way, if you have an agent representing the buyer and an agent representing the seller, can it be a dual agency?
If they're from the same broker?
So proud of you. Yes, exactly. A lot of people get that wrong because you just hit on the point. At the end of the day, it's not the agent's transaction, it's the broker's.
Gotcha.
So if both agents are working under the same broker, it's a dual agency. And that's what people forget when they start practicing real estate. So that's a big one right there. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Transaction broker. That sounds very similar to a dual agent. I mean, you're helping both. You're helping both do what they need to do to get the transaction. But what's the fundamental difference between a transaction broker and a dual agent?
I believe they just help to with the paperwork. They're not really representing them. They're just, oh, they're not an agent?
Yeah, I mean, they could be licensed and whatnot, but they're not
Oh,
performing the acts of agency in that transaction.
right.
That's the big difference with them right there. So with that being said, what's the answer here?
A real estate, I'm going to read the question again. Is that
Okay,
okay?
yeah, that sounds great. Do that.
A real estate broker specializes in helping both buyers and sellers with the necessary paperwork involved in transferring the property. Although not an agent for either party, the broker may not disclose either party's confidential information to the other. The broker is best described as an, I'm going to say D, transaction broker,
Why?
because it says they're not an agent for either party.
What I love you did right there is you looked for a keyword because everything here says, may not disclose either party's confidential information. Well, a dual agent does that, right?
Mhm.
A lot of it sounds like dual agency, but what you found here is a very keyword. They're not an agent. Okay? That's huge, which led you to the correct answer. And what I want people learning from what Amanda just did there is she saw a big paragraph, but immediately something stuck out to you. Not an agent. You're like, wow, that's huge right there. Correct?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, good. We're moving. Next question, right?
hmm
Okay.
Okay. A developer built a structure that was 6 stories. Several years later, an ordinance was passed in that area banning any building 6 stories or higher. The building is A, classified as non-conforming use, B, ready to be demolished, C, conditional use, D, a zoning violation.
Okay. What are they asking about here?
I think they're asking what, oh, okay, yeah, zoning.
Right. We're talking about zoning, right? What's zoning?
The plan or the layout for an area?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you live next to a gas station?
No.
Would you want to live next to a gas station?
No.
Why not?
Uh, I wouldn't be very comfortable.
Would the gas station want to be near you?
No.
And what we're getting at here is zoning. The gas station wants to be near other businesses, and people who live in their homes want to live by other people who live in their homes. If it wasn't for zoning, you may end up being next to that gas station, which wouldn't be much fun, would it?
No.
No. Thank God for zoning. Okay? Zoning is the regulation of private land use developed by local governments. There are no federal zoning laws. Zoning is an essential part of the master plan. The master plan is the layout of the city. Zoning increases the marketability of the property. How do we know? Well, would your property value go up or down if it's next to a gas station?
Down.
It would go down. So it would ruin the marketability of the property if there is no zoning. Zoning makes sure there's that continuity of you living in a residential area and at gas stations by other businesses. Zoning is a police power. You got to remember this sentence. Promise me you'll remember this.
Okay.
Police power is the power that is held by the state to legislate for the purpose of preserving the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Can you read that out loud for me, please?
Zoning is a police power. The police power is the power that is held by the state to legislate for the purpose of preserving the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare.
Awesome. That's a big one. Since we're talking about police power, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
You ready to be quizzed?
I think so.
Do you know the 4 government powers?
Oh gosh. Um, I know I think it's acronym for it, Pete.
Good. Pete's involved.
Uh,
Definitely an important part of it. Pete.
and I know that taxation
Good.
and escheat,
Good.
um, police power,
Good.
and I can't remember the other E.
I'll give you a hint. You live by a highway. The government wants to expand that highway. What
Oh,
right do they have to do that?
eminent domain.
Yes. Awesome. Good job. Eminent domain. And they use this thing called condemnation to pay you. And if you don't get paid, you can sue, which is called inverse condemnation. Okay, so police power, escheat, taxation, eminent domain. What's escheat?
When they take your house without having a will, like the state takes it.
What was the
If you
deal with
went,
Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol?
oh
What was his whole story? I mean, if you haven't seen Ebenezer Scrooge in that movie, then, I mean,
yeah.
don't like Christmas.
He didn't have anybody to give his home to, his money to when he was passing.
He was getting old and he was grumpy and nobody liked him. He had no family. And then the ghost came to remind him, like, listen, man, you're getting old. There's nobody to give your money to. So basically, if Ebenezer Scrooge died, what would have happened to his house? I mean, he had no friends, no family. He was a basically lonely, crotchety old man.
It would go escheat to the state.
Exactly. It would escheat to the state. Okay, there's no will, no heirs, nothing. So it escheat to the state. Police power, basically talking about zoning, and eminent domain, we just mentioned. It's the right to take your property for the greater good. Okay.
Okay.
Zoning for land use is generally divided into residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial, and special purpose properties. I have a question. You probably know
Yeah.
what residential is, right? It's like your house.
Yes.
Commercial, what's that?
Like restaurants,
Sure.
businesses.
Agricultural and industrial, we could probably figure out. But what's a special use property? That one seems a little ambiguous to me. The rest of them, the definition's right there in the name. But special use property, like, what are they talking about there? What is a special use property?
I don't know. Airport?
Here we go, ready?
Yeah.
Things like
Oh.
schools, hospitals, police stations, those are special use properties. Okay?
Uh-huh.
They have a special use. What's down zoning? Oh,
I have no idea.
down zoning is when something goes from commercial to residential. Down zoning is a change in the zoning to permit less intensive developments that are currently permitted. For example, going from commercial to residential. On your exam, when they bring up down zoning, they're going to talk about going from commercial to residential. And here I have my nice picture of my big building and the little house. Just remember, office buildings are traditionally bigger than houses.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yes.
You sound insecure. Don't sound insecure. You're going to get this. You're going to be great.
Well, I was going to ask you, do they take commercial buildings and turn them into apartments? Is that what you mean?
That's a great question. Hold that thought.
Okay.
What's a variant?
Sorry.
No. I love that you asked that. I just want you to hold that. So we're going to get to that in a second. What's a variant?
Honestly, I don't remember.
A variance is an exception to a rule that won't affect the rest of the community.
Oh, okay.
So a variance is the exception that is granted from the zoning rules. The key point here is that it doesn't affect the rest of the community. Okay? So a variance is granted when the situation is exceptional, and if granted, it will not affect the rest of the community. We're going to go into this in more detail in another lesson, but hold that thought. Okay?
Okay.
What I loved you asked about is you just asked about non-conforming use. Okay? What does the word non-conforming mean to you? When you hear the word non-conforming, you think of like a stubborn teenager with like eye black and goth shoes.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yes.
Those kids are so annoying. I used to be one.
It's
So what does that word mean to you? Non-conforming.
not conforming to society. It's not conforming to what everybody else is doing.
Good. Here, let's read this definition. Can you read it out loud for me?
Yes. A non-conforming use will allow an owner to continue a land use that existed previously but no longer conforms to the zoning.
Nice catch there.
For example, if your house is in a residential area, but then zoning changes the area to commercial, you would not have to convert your house into a gas station in order to conform. You would be granted non-conforming use to keep using it as a residential for a certain period of time. The zoning board will determine just how long the non-conforming use will last.
Now ask me that question you asked about before about the building. You said, what happens to that commercial building if the zoning changes? Well, they're
Yeah.
going to be granted non-conforming use.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Excellent. So that's why I said hold off on that question, because 2 slides later, you were literally going to answer that exact question. And that's why that question was so great. All right. So let's answer this question.
I'm going to read it again. A developer built a structure that has 6 stories. Several years later, an ordinance was passed in that area banning any buildings 6 stories or higher. The building is, I'm going to say A, classified as non-conforming use.
Awesome. Okay. All right. What do you think of this question?
Looks long.
It does look long. It does look long. Can you read it out loud for me?
Sure. A real estate professional listed a house for $247,900. A member of a racial minority group saw the house and was interested in it. When the prospective buyer asked the real estate professional the price of the house, the real estate professional said the house was listed for $253,000 and that the seller was very firm on the price. Under the Federal Fair Housing Act of 1968, such a statement is A. Legal because the law only requires the buyer the opportunity to buy the house. B. Legal because the representation was made by the real estate professional and not directly by the owner. C. Illegal because the difference between the offer price and the quoted price was greater than 10%. Or D. Illegal because the terms of the sale were changed based upon the prospective buyer.
Okay. What sticks out to your mind in that question?
Um,
Like, what do you
I'm
think
gonna
they're asking about here?
I'm gonna say, well, what sticks out to me is the minority group.
Okay, so two things. Excellent. I love that you said that. So here, so what sticks out to you is this.
Yep. And the prices are different.
No, bad, bad. We don't care about that.
Right. Oh, okay.
The other thing I wanted you to name was this.
Oh, yeah.
It could be $2 and $5 million. It doesn't matter. What we're
Okay.
talking about is the Federal Fair Housing Act. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that year, 1968. Do you know what happened in 1968?
Was that the year Martin Luther King passed away?
Yep, that was the year he was assassinated. Excellent. So, hugely important year in our history. And right after he was assassinated, they passed this legislation, the Federal Fair Housing Act. Very big deal in our country. Okay? 1968 is a huge year for our country and for your real estate exam. So, you're going to want to remember that. Okay?
Okay.
When we're talking about discrimination for your exam, it is never okay. So, when you see this here, you see that there?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the rest of the question says. There's no way that's going to be the answer. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then it leaves you with these two, C and D, right?
Right.
Which one's asking about people? C or D?
D.
D. C is asking about the money.
Right.
If it was a question about finance, that money may be relevant. But the moment they bring up federal fair housing, obviously they're not asking about money. They're asking about people being treated fairly, which would lead you to believe what's the answer after using that process of elimination.
D.
D. Now, what we did in that process is we looked at a question and we tried to get to the most important facts. They're dealing with fair housing is illegal, bam, let's get this done, it's D. All the rest of this information, the price of the house, what it was listed, is irrelevant. It said the seller was very firm on the price. Who cares? It's not relevant. Because you may end up rationalizing a situation that has nothing to do with the answer that will get you past the real estate exam.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. You have enough energy for 3 more questions?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Deep breath. Let's go.
Okay. A real estate professional receives a check for earnest money from a buyer and deposits the money in the real estate professional's personal interest-bearing checking account over the weekend. The action exposes the real estate professional to a charge of A. Commingling, B. Novation, C. Subrogation, or D. Accretion.
Okay. So let's just go into basic language skills. When you think of the word commingle, let's start with option A. It's the first one there. Commingling. What pops
Okay.
out to you when you see that word?
Mingle.
Mingle. Excellent. The word mingle pops out. So in real estate terms, you're mixing money. Mingling's mixing money. Okay? And what I'm going to try and show you is you may not know real estate that well, but by your basic mastery of the English language, you could pass your real estate exam just by using simple logic. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, novation. Nova is Latin for new. Okay? Nova new. Say that 10 times, please. Nova new.
Nova new. Nova new. Nova new. Nova new. Nova new. Nova new.
Good. So novation is Latin for new, and that has to do with contract law. When you hear the
Okay.
word subrogation, you see the word sub. What does sub mean to you?
Like substitute?
Good. Substitute. Excellent. So you're substituting one part for another. And accretion just has to do with increasing the land when you live near a stream. It's basically like a gift from Mother Nature. If you live by some water and then the land increases because of the motion of that water, you get land. It's called accretion. Okay? So basically you're getting more dirt. Very exciting, right?
Right.
Okay. Oh, crap. Sorry. Okay, so let's read this.
Okay. A real estate professional receives a check for earnest money from a buyer and deposits the money in the real estate professional's personal interest-bearing checking account over the weekend. The action exposes the real estate professional to a charge of A. Commingling, B. Novation, C. Subrogation, or D. Accretion.
Okay, so is there anything to do with dirt, streams, land, anything to do with that?
No.
Is anything being substituted?
No.
No. Is there anything new?
No.
Is there anything being mingled?
Yes.
What?
The earnest money.
He's putting his money into his personal interest-bearing checking account. What a scumbag. Major
Yeah.
no-no in our profession. Okay, so what you just witnessed is
Commingling.
commingling. There you go. All right. Moving right along. Okay. What does this question say?
Which of the following is a lien on real estate? A. Recorded easement. B. Recorded mortgage. C. Encroachment. Or D. Deed restriction.
Okay. So what are they asking about here?
The lien?
Exactly. They want you to understand liens. Okay, that's what they're getting at here. They want you to understand what a lien is. So What's a lien? Do you know what a lien is? Well, let me ask you this. What's a mortgage?
Um,
Let's back up for a second. What's a mortgage?
Mortgage is money that you owe on your home.
Say it one more time.
Money that you owe on your home.
Would you say a mortgage has to do with money?
Yes.
Would you say a mortgage is a lien?
Yes.
Good. A mortgage is a lien because you owe money. Say this to me 10 times. Lien money, lien money, lien money, lien money.
Lien money, lien money, lien money, lien money, lien money.
Lien money. Every time you hear the word lien, you need to think of money. Okay? A lien always has to do with owing money. A mortgage is a charge of real or personal property by a debtor as a creditor's security for a debt, especially when the purchase of the property, on the condition that it was returned on a payment of the debt within a certain period. So basically, you owe money. You got to know this. This is hugely important for your exam and also for your real estate career. You'll hear the word lien all the time. Voluntary, involuntary liens, junior liens, general liens, specific liens, tax liens, judgment liens, mechanics liens. What do they all have to do with at the end of the day in one form or another?
Money.
Money, exactly. Mechanics lien, you owe a worker. Tax lien, you owe the government. Judgment means the court said you owe money. General liens mean you owe money on all property. If you lose it, you're going to have to give up all property. Specific liens means if you don't pay, you'll give up specific property. Wait a minute, there's a voluntary lien? How's that possible? When would you volunteer to owe somebody money? That sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
When would that happen?
I'm not sure.
When you have a mortgage, do you owe money?
Yes.
Do you have to take out a mortgage?
No.
Would you say you're volunteering to owe money when you take out a mortgage?
Yes.
So that's a voluntary lien. A mortgage is a voluntary lien because you don't have to take out a mortgage. You have to pay your taxes. That's involuntary. But a mortgage, you made the choice to borrow that money. So that's an
Okay.
example of a voluntary lien. All right, so what's the answer here?
Which of the following is a lien on real estate? I'm going to say B, recorded mortgage.
Excellent. Good, because what's an easement?
An easement is,
You know what the answer is? I don't know, but it has nothing to do with money. Right? Because once we saw this lien, you know I'm looking for the thing that has to do with money. And the rest of these have nothing to do with money. I know a mortgage has to do with money,
Exactly.
right? So if I ask
Right.
you what an easement is, say, I don't know and I don't care because it has nothing to do with money. I know that much and I'm good to go. So I
Okay.
may be stupid and say whatever you want, but at least I have my real estate license because I passed, right? That's our goal, right? Like that. It's like, you may know everything, but I got a license. Whoopee.
That's right.
There you go. Okay, and there it is. Okay. Last one. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Why don't you read that question out loud for us?
Okay. A sales contract was signed by a minor. Which of the following describes the contract? A, voidable, B, breached, C, discharged, or D, void?
Okay, so what are they asking about here? We're talking about contract law with this one, correct?
Yes.
All right, so let's start with this. They're asking what is a valid contract and what is the difference between void, valid, and voidable. They're actually asking about two concepts in one very short question. Tricky, right?
Yes.
So, what is a valid contract? Can you tell me?
I know that there's supposed to be four parts.
Awesome, that's correct. What are those four parts?
Uh, Mutual parties,
Oh, close.
Oh,
Blended.
competent parties. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you're
Competent.
doing great. Yes, yes.
Legal. Consideration.
Bang.
That's all I remember.
You did great. Read these out loud, as you see on the screen.
Uh, okay. Mutual consent. Lawful object. Capable parties and consideration.
Good. What does mutual consent mean?
Two people that agree.
Good. Lawful object. What does that mean?
The item and the legal.
Is a contract to kill a contract at all?
No.
Because it's not lawful. What does
Right.
capable parties mean?
Not under duress, not
Doesn't mean that.
they were in their right.
What were you going to say? I interrupted you.
They're in their. Oh, like they're competent.
Good. And they're not a minor.
Minor. Okay.
Right. They're of age and they're of capable parties that are sound mind. And consideration is money or whatever the reason is you're doing this for.
Right.
Okay. Difference between void, valid, and voidable. What do you think?
Void, you can't do it. Valid, you gotta do it. Voidable, you have the option to do it. For example, duress.
Oh, another grammar error by me. I'm great at passing the exam, but don't ask me to review your, my grammar's terrible. Okay. You signed to buy a red house. I have the red house. All parts of the contract are fulfilled. What is that contract?
Valid.
Excellent. Good. You signed to buy the red house, but you show up and the house is blue. What is it now?
Voidable.
Good. Why? Why is that not void? You wanted a red house. The house is blue.
Because you still have the option to change your mind if you don't want it.
Right, because you may be like, Joe, I wanted the red house, but that blue, that's kick-ass, man. I really like the blue. That's just a great color. So you have the option to go through with it. I want to sell my red house, and you're walking down the street, and I put a gun to your head, and I say, Amanda, buy the house. Buy the house, or else I'm going to shoot you, and terrible, and you're scared out of your mind, and you sign the contract. What is that now? That's got to be void, right? I mean, there's a gun to your head.
I would say voidable.
Why?
Because you might like the house.
Exactly. Great. So I'm holding this gun to your head, and you may turn to me and be like, listen, man, you're going a little crazy. I kind of like the house. The gun's kind of, I mean, this is really a little over the top. I mean, I'm kind of into the house. You can relax. I'm like, oh, my bad. Sorry. I just didn't know if you're going to buy it. I got really nervous and everything. So you have the option to go through it. My crazy, insane behavior should not force you to buy or not buy the house. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's voidable. Now, I say buy the house, and then I invite you to my 17th birthday. What now?
Okay.
So I say, you bought this house, great. After this contract is done, let's totally celebrate my 17th birthday at your house. Now what?
I think it's void.
Why?
Because they're not of age. It's not a capable party.
Right, you're like, whoa, hold on. Wait a minute. This whole contract is crap. And you don't have the option to go through with it. It's not voidable, it's void. And it violates one of those essentials of a valid contract. Right?
Yes.
By the way, what are the four essentials of a valid contract?
Oh.
Come on, we just did it a few minutes ago.
Mutual consideration.
Nope. Mutual
Oh.
consent.
Oh, that's right. It has to be legal
Good.
and um, consideration, like what you're gonna use to buy it, could be love or money,
Good.
and capable parties.
Excellent. So let's do this question.
A sales contract was signed by a minor. Which of the following describes the contract? D. Void.
Awesome. A minor does not have the option to go through the contract. So there it is. It's void. All right. Nice work. Okay. So we went over a bunch of concepts tonight. That was about an hour. So I think we're good for this evening. What do you think?
Yeah?
Okay. And we're going to go over some new questions a little bit later. And if anybody else wants to go through this, just send me some questions and maybe we'll have a session like we do with Amanda. Amanda, I hope this really helped you tonight.
It's so helpful.
Good. All right, so we'll meet again. And once again, it's Joe with PrepAgent. I hope you guys learned something from this and send me any questions you may have under the comments under this YouTube video. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much.